The story begins in ancient Egypt, where the art of embalming was practiced for thousands of years. Egyptians mummified their dead to preserve them for the afterlife, believing the body was the soul's eternal vessel. The process was sacred. Bodies were eviscerated, dried with natron salts, wrapped and placed into elaborately decorated tombs. When Europeans first encountered these preserved corpses during the Crusades and later during trade and exploration, they were both fascinated and horrified. But more than that, they were curious. Many believed mummies held medicinal properties. This belief wasn't pulled from thin air. Early physicians mistook the resin and bitumen used in Egyptian embalming for a natural substance called mumia, a black tar-like mineral thought to have healing powers. The confusion was fateful. Mumia became synonymous with the flesh of embalmed bodies, and soon European apothecaries began grinding up real human mummies into powder and selling it in jars. The darker and more resinous the corpse, the more valuable it was considered. This wasn't just pseudoscience, it was textbook medicine. Renowned doctors like Paracelsus and Guy de la Fontaine praised the use of mumia. Pharmacopoeias from the 1500s and 1600s listed as a treatment for epilepsy, internal bleeding, cough, and even poisoning. The trade flourished. Egyptian tombs were looted. Entire shipments of mummified bodies were exported to Europe. Grave robbing became a lucrative business, with dealers selling desiccated remains in bulk to meet growing demand. But it wasn't just about health. There was a belief that consuming the dead granted you part of their power, their vitality. This belief would evolve in strange and horrifying ways.
This was not a practice limited to the uneducated. Far from it. The list of believers in mumia includes some of the most powerful and influential figures of the time. Francis I of France reportedly carried a pouch of mummy powder with him, using it regularly. Catherine de' Medici, famed for her interest in alchemy, was said to use mummy-based remedies for her children. Even royalty in England, such as Charles II, were rumored to partake. The Church did not officially condemn the practice. Some popes allowed the use of mumia, considering it part of accepted medicinal practice. The irony of a Christian Europe consuming the bodies of ancient non-Christians was rarely discussed. For commoners, mumia was expensive but sometimes attainable. Apothecaries sold it in capsules, tinctures, or as powders to mix with wine. It was advertised as a panacea, a universal cure, much like snake oil in later centuries. The more decayed the body, the less potent it was believed to be. Therefore, the demand focused on well-preserved mummies, preferably ancient Egyptian nobles or priests. The more resin-soaked, the better. But as supplies dwindled, the trade took a darker turn.
By the 17th century, Egypt's tombs had been thoroughly plundered. European demand far outstripped supply, so merchants and grave robbers got creative and criminal. They began to fake mummies. Bodies of criminals, slaves, or even plague victims were dried, covered in bitumen and spices, and sold as authentic Egyptian mummies. In some cases, entire mummy factories existed near Cairo, where bodies were artificially aged and packaged for export. Some of these fakes made their way into the hands of royalty. There were even guides on how to distinguish a true mummy from a fake, based on texture, color, and smell. Meanwhile, Egyptian authorities tried to stop the looting, but colonial pressures and corrupt local officials made enforcement impossible. The desecration of burial sites continued. Worse still, rumors circulated of Europeans consuming fresh bodies, executed criminals or poor people under the guise of medicinal flesh. In some regions, body snatching wasn't limited to Egypt at all. The line between medicine and cannibalism had fully blurred.
In the 18th and 19th centuries, Enlightenment thinking began to challenge traditional medicine. Scientific analysis questioned the efficacy of mumia, chemists found that its supposed benefits were placebo at best and dangerous at worst. Public attitudes started to shift. Religious leaders began condemning the practice more openly. Consuming human remains was now seen as heretical and grotesque. Yet mumia didn't vanish overnight. Some pharmacists continued selling it well into the 1800s, especially in rural areas. It took formal legislation and the rise of modern pharmacology to finally end the trade. Ironically, just as mummy medicine faded, a new mummy craze emerged: the Victorian obsession with Egypt. Mummies were still being imported, not to grind up, but to unwrap in front of party guests. This era replaced consumption with spectacle, but the objectification of the dead remain. We'd like to think we've moved on, but echoes of mummy medicine linger. The commodification of human remains persists in art, museums, and even certain alternative medicines. More importantly, the history of mumia forces us to confront how scientific justification can mask moral atrocity. Educated societies justified cannibalism through misunderstood science and cultural superiority. Colonized bodies became disposable commodities. Today, debates around the ethical display of mummies in museums ask similar questions. Who owns the dead? Who has the right to disturb them for study, entertainment, or profit? If we learned anything from the age of mumia, it's this: knowledge without ethics is dangerous. And sometimes, the line between healing and horror is thinner than we'd like to admit. So the next time you walk into a pharmacy, take a moment. Behind every miracle cure, every bottle of pills, every ancient secret repackaged for modern wellness, ask, where did this come from? Who paid the price? Because once upon a time, healing meant desecrating tombs, erasing cultures, and swallowing the dead. And almost no one questioned it. If you found this story as disturbing and fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. History isn't just about the past. It's a mirror to the present. Thanks for watching.